When I faced my husband and his mistress in court on Valentine's Day, he looked as relaxed as someone waiting for their name to be called at a barber shop. My daughter sat behind him, not behind me. 35 years of marriage collapsed into a 4-meter gap between two tables. His lawyer proposed a property split leaning in his favor. He smiled, the kind of smile from someone who thinks they've already won. Then my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we would like to call one more witness." The entire courtroom fell silent. My husband's smile vanished the moment he saw who was walking in. "Thank you for choosing to spend your time here. It truly means more than you know." Before we continue, drop a comment and tell me what city or country you're listening from. I read your comments and I love knowing who is walking through these stories with me. This is a fictional narrative crafted to explore complex emotions and choices. While some elements are dramatized, the themes behind it are meaningful and thought-provoking. Please keep in mind certain details are fictionalized for entertainment and educational reflection. Any similarity to real people or places is entirely coincidental, but the ideas shared here are meant to offer depth and insight. I was sitting 12 feet away from my husband in a Multnomah County courtroom on Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. 35 years ago, Thomas had given me roses and a card that said, "Forever." This year, he'd given me a subpoena and a lawyer who kept saying, "settlement," like it was supposed to comfort me. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and recycled air. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, one of them flickering just enough to make my left eye twitch. Judge Susan Coleman sat at the bench, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, flipping through documents with the kind of efficiency that made you think she'd seen it all. Thomas sat at the defendant's table in a navy suit I'd never seen before. Probably bought it with money I didn't know we had. He looked calm, bored even, like this was an errand he was trying to get through. Behind him in the gallery sat Angela Monroe, 45 years old, honey blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, chin tilted up just enough to let everyone know she thought she belonged there. She'd been sitting in that same spot every day of this trial, watching Thomas like he was a prize she'd already won. A few seats down from Angela was my daughter, Nicole, 32 years old, my only child, the girl I'd rocked to sleep when she had nightmares, the one I'd helped move into her first apartment. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor. She hadn't looked at me once since the trial started. Not once. My lawyer, Jennifer Stone, stood up. She was 54, steel gray hair and the kind of voice that could cut through a room. "Your Honor," she said, "we have one more witness." The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioning rattling through the vents. I leaned forward. My hands were shaking. Jennifer glanced back at me and nodded. That's when I whispered it, barely audible. Oh my God, she actually came. The double doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and Eleanor Whitmore walked in, 83 years old, white hair pinned back in a bun, a walker with tennis balls on the legs, moving one slow, deliberate step at a time. She wore a navy cardigan and a floral dress, the same one from Easter dinner 2 years ago. Thomas's mother. I watched his face, the smirk he'd been wearing for 3 days, the one that said, "You'll never prove anything," crumbled. His jaw went slack. His eyes widened. He turned to his lawyer, Patrick, and I saw it panic. Real, unfiltered panic. Patrick looked just as confused. He flipped through his notes, frowning. I found out later that Thomas's legal team had known Eleanor was on the witness list for 2 weeks. They'd seen her name. They'd assumed she was there to testify for Thomas. Why wouldn't they? She was his mother. They never bothered to prep her, never called, never asked what she was going to say. A fatal mistake. Eleanor reached the witness stand. The bailiff helped her up the step. She settled into the chair, adjusted her cardigan, and looked directly at Thomas. Not at me, not at the judge, at him. And I knew. I knew right then that everything was about to change. Jennifer Stone picked up a folder from our table and walked toward Eleanor with the kind of calm confidence that only comes from knowing you've already won. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, how a 61-year-old man's smile can collapse in a single moment, how an 83-year-old woman with a walker can bring down an empire of lies, and how the daughter I raised my own flesh and blood ended up sitting on the wrong side of that courtroom. It started 11 months ago, on a Tuesday morning, with a credit card statement I wasn't supposed to see. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 58 years old, and up until 11 months ago, I thought I had a pretty normal life. Not glamorous, not exciting, just normal. I work as a payroll coordinator at Pacific Northwest Logistics in Portland, Oregon. I've been there for 35 years. Same building, same cubicle, same Friday donut tradition in the break room. I make $68,000 a year, which isn't impressive, but it's steady, reliable, the kind of income that lets you plan ahead. And I had been planning 18 months until retirement, 60 years old. That was the goal. Thomas and I were going to travel, maybe buy an RV, drive through the national parks, Yellowstone, Glacier, the Grand Canyon, all the places we'd talked about but never gotten around to visiting. I'd married Thomas Whitmore 35 years ago. We met on a hiking trip up Mount Hood. He spilled coffee on my boots at the trailhead, apologized about 12 times, and then asked if he could buy me lunch to make up for it. By the time we got back to Portland, I'd agreed to a second date. He was charming, funny, ambitious. He just started his own business, Cascade Clean Fleet, pressure washing and fleet maintenance. He had one truck, one employee, and a lot of confidence. Over the years, he'd built it into something solid. 2 locations now, one on Burnside Street downtown and another in Hillsborough. He'd always been vague about the numbers. Business is good, he'd say. Or, we're doing high 6 figures this year. I never pressed. He handled the business. I handled the house. That's how it worked. We had one daughter, Nicole, 32 years old. She'd opened a boutique in the Pearl District a few years back, high-end women's clothing, locally sourced, all the things Portland loves. I'd helped her with the startup costs 2 years ago, $40,000 from my retirement savings. She'd promised to pay it back when things picked up. The boutique closed last year. She said the lease was too expensive. That foot traffic wasn't what she'd hoped. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter. We were in what people call the empty nest phase. Nicole had her own apartment, her own life. It was just Thomas and me now rattling around in a house that suddenly felt too big. But I didn't mind. I'd started thinking of it as our second honeymoon era. Quiet dinners, weekend trips to the coast, planning for the future. Our 35th wedding anniversary was coming up in June. Coral anniversary. I'd already started looking at vacation rentals on the Oregon coast. Cannon Beach, maybe. Somewhere with a view. Life felt stable, safe, predictable. Looking back now, the signs were there long before I saw them. But when you trust someone for 35 years, you don't see what you don't want to look for. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You assume the best. You tell yourself that the late nights at the shop are just busy season, that the new clothes are because he's finally taking care of himself, that the distance is just stress. You convince yourself that everything is fine. I'd spent decades building trust. I should have been building evidence files, because the truth is I wasn't paying attention. I was busy. I was tired. I was 58 years old and counting down to retirement, and I didn't have the energy to question every little thing that felt off. I thought I knew my husband. I thought I knew my daughter. I thought I knew my life. I was wrong on all 3 counts. So here's where it started. On a Tuesday morning in early March, I was homesick with a cold, nothing serious, just enough to keep me on the couch with tea and daytime television. Thomas had already left for the Burnside location. Nicole was probably at her apartment doing whatever it is 32-year-olds do when they're unemployed and figuring things out. And I found something in our mailbox, something that made absolutely no sense. The envelope was already half open when I pulled it from the mailbox, a Chase credit card statement addressed to Thomas, an account I'd never seen before. I almost tossed it onto the pile of business mail we kept on the kitchen counter. Thomas handled his own paperwork. I handled mine. That's how it had always been. But my eyes caught on the numbers. $2,850 at a jewelry store in Washington Square Mall. The kind of place with a security guard at the door and display cases that locked. $489 at a boutique hotel in Cannon Beach, Oregon. $95 at a florist on a random Wednesday. I stood in the kitchen and did the math. My birthday was in November. It was March. Our anniversary wasn't until June. Who buys flowers on a random Wednesday in March? I asked him that night. He was unlacing his work boots by the front door, the same ritual he'd done for 35 years. Boots off, socks in the laundry, wash his hands before dinner. He didn't flinch, didn't stammer. He looked at me like I was being ridiculous. The jewelry that was a watch for his fleet manager. The guy had just referred a huge contract. Thomas wanted to say thank you. The Hotel A team planning session. He'd taken both location managers up to the coast for a weekend strategy meeting. The flowers, a client's mother, had just passed away. He'd sent condolences on behalf of the business. Every answer was smooth, warm, like he'd rehearsed it. He even pulled me close, kissed my forehead. "Babe," he said. "You know I'd never—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. When someone you love looks you straight in the eye and tells you you're wrong, you want to believe them. I wanted to believe him. I tried to believe him, but I didn't throw the statement away. Something told me to keep it. Some quiet, stubborn instinct I didn't even know I still had. I slipped it into a Ziploc bag and tucked it into the linen closet behind the bath towels, a place Thomas would never look. I was 58 years old. I needed reading glasses now to see the fine print. My eyesight wasn't what it used to be, but my instincts, those hadn't aged a day. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was manufacturing problems where there weren't any, that 35 years of marriage should mean something, that trust should count for something. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The numbers were too clean. The explanations were too perfect. The way he'd looked at me, not defensive, not apologetic, just calm. Like he'd expected the question. Like he'd already prepared the answer. I went to bed that night and lay awake staring at the ceiling. Thomas was asleep beside me, snoring softly, one arm draped over my waist, like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just tired, stressed, 58 and counting down to retirement and looking for problems that didn't exist. But I kept thinking about that statement. About the jewelry store. About the hotel. About the flowers on a Wednesday. I didn't tell anyone. Actually, that's not true. I did tell someone, one person I thought I could trust. My daughter. I met Nicole for lunch 3 days later at a cafe in the Pearl District not far from where her boutique used to be. We ordered. She got avocado toast, I got soup, cheaper. I showed her the photo on my phone, the screenshot of the credit card statement. Jewelry, hotel, flowers. Her face didn't change. I couldn't read it. Not shock, not anger, just nothing. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Mom," she said. "Let me look into this. I'll check with Dad," discreetly. Relief flooded through me. My daughter, my ally. 18 hours later, Thomas came home furious. His face was red. The veins in his neck were bulging. He slammed his keys onto the counter and turned on me. "How dare you poison Nicole against me?" Every word I'd said at lunch, he knew it. All of it. Nicole had told him everything. She'd called him from the parking lot of the cafe before she'd even driven away. I texted her later that night. Her response came back within minutes. "Mom, he's my dad. I had to tell him, you're being paranoid." That's when I realized it. I had no one. My sister lived in Phoenix, 2,000 miles away. We talked maybe 3 times a year. My parents had passed in 2019. My friends were really just the wives of Thomas's business associates. My coworkers were polite but distant. I was their supervisor. There's always a line. And Nicole, my only child, 32 years of my life, had picked her father in less than 18 hours. I kept thinking about her as a little girl, how she used to stand at the window waiting for him to come home from work. "Daddy, Daddy." She'd run and leap into his arms. He'd lift her up, spin her around, and she'd giggle like it was the best moment of her day. He was the one who let her have ice cream when I said no, the one who let her stay up past bedtime, the one who bought her the toys she wanted even after I'd said we couldn't afford it. I was the one who made her brush her teeth, made her do her homework, made her clean her room, said no to things. He was fun. I was practical. At 58 years old, I finally understood the dynamic. I'd played parent. He'd played friend. And when a kid has to choose between parent and friend, they pick the friend, every time. But here's the thing. I didn't stop. I kept the statement, added it to the Ziploc bag in the linen closet, and I started paying closer attention. Not to confront him, not to accuse him, just to watch. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way he tilted his phone away from me when he texted. The way he took calls in the garage instead of the living room. The way he'd come home smelling like cologne I hadn't bought him. I didn't say anything. I just watched, and I started keeping records. Dates, times, patterns. I wrote them down in a notebook I kept in my car, a cheap spiral-bound thing from the dollar store. Nothing fancy, just facts. March 10th, home late, said he had a supplier meeting, shirt smelled like perfume. March 14th, took a call in the driveway, walked to the end of the block, talked for 20 minutes. March 18th, new credit card statement arrived, different account. More charges I didn't recognize. I photographed everything, every statement, every receipt I found in his truck, every piece of paper that didn't add up, and that Ziploc bag. It started to fill up. I didn't have anyone to talk to, no one to trust, no one who would believe me. But I had evidence. And at 58 years old, working in payroll for 35 years, I knew one thing for certain. Numbers don't lie. People do. That Ziploc bag in the linen closet. It was about to get a lot fuller. It got worse. Much worse. 5 slow months crawled by. March, April, May, June, July, and Thomas didn't stop. He escalated. He started coming home later. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, midnight. At the shop, he'd say. Or, supplier meeting in Beaverton ran long. His phone was always face down on the kitchen counter. And here's the detail that made my skin crawl. He started showering immediately when he got home, even if it was 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night. A man who used to fall asleep on the couch watching the Trailblazers was suddenly obsessed with personal hygiene. If cleanliness is next to godliness, Thomas was scrubbing away mortal sins. Then came the financial squeeze. In July, I logged into our Bank of America account on a Monday morning and saw it. $18,500. Transferred out of our joint, checking into a business account I didn't have access to. I asked him about it that night. Equipment upgrade, he said. New pressure washers for the Burnside location. On Saturday, I drove past the Burnside shop. Same old equipment. Same faded decals on the trucks. Same cracked hoses coiled on the racks. Same weathered signage that had been there since 2019. $18,500 in upgrades. Nothing had changed. He also changed the password on our savings account. Just a security update, babe. I'll give you the new one soon. He never did. And the deposits into our joint checking account, they dropped. From $4,100 a month to $2,300. My take-home pay after taxes was about $4,100 a month. Our mortgage was $2,180. That left me with $1,920 to cover everything else. Groceries, gas, utilities, insurance. Before we'd had $3,720, now $1,920. I started bringing leftovers from Sunday dinner to work for the whole week. Monday pot roast, Tuesday pot roast, Wednesday pot roast, Thursday pot roast. Linda Parker from accounting noticed on Thursday. Same pot roast 4 days straight. Practicing mindful spending, I said. She didn't laugh. Neither did I. In May, Thomas's mother Eleanor had a stroke. A mild one, the hospital said. She was 83. I got the call at work and drove straight there. She was awake, lucid, but shaken. Warning stroke, the doctor told me. She needs to take it easy, monitor her closely. Thomas didn't visit, not once. Too busy with contracts, he said. So I went. Every other day for 3 weeks. I brought her meals, helped her with her physical therapy exercises, made sure she was taking her medications. One afternoon, she grabbed my hand while I was adjusting her pillows. "You're a good daughter," she said. "Daughter-in-law," I corrected gently. She squeezed tighter. "No," she said. "Daughter." I thought it was the stroke talking, some residual confusion, a misfire in her brain. Looking back now, Eleanor saw what I didn't see yet. She saw the truth, that her son had stopped being my husband long before I'd stopped being his wife, and she'd already chosen a side. By late June, I was exhausted. 58 years old, 18 months from retirement, eating 4-day-old pot roast and watching my husband lie to my face every single night. I kept the notebook in my car. I kept the Ziploc bag in the linen closet. I kept photographing statements and receipts and anything that didn't add up. I didn't know what I was building toward. I just knew I couldn't stop. Because the alternative, believing him, trusting him, letting it go, felt like surrendering. And I wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. I kept thinking about what Linda had said, about the pot roast. She hadn't been judging me. She'd been worried. And that's when I realized I wasn't just angry anymore. I was scared. Scared that I was 58 years old and suddenly didn't recognize my own life. Scared that the man I'd married 35 years ago had become a stranger. Scared that my daughter had picked his side without even asking mine. Scared that I was alone in a house I'd lived in for 20 years and it didn't feel like home anymore. But I kept going. Because I didn't have a choice. And then late June came. The family dinner that changed everything. I found out about the family dinner the way people find out about hurtful things lately through someone's online posts. Nicole posted it on a Friday night at 7 o'clock. A photo of a salmon plate, roasted vegetables, candles. The caption read, "Family Dinner Nights." I hadn't been invited. I hadn't heard a word about it. I swiped through 4 more photos. The second one showed the dining table. Thomas at the head, Nicole beside him, Eleanor across from them. She'd just gotten out of the hospital, and a woman I didn't know. Dark hair pulled back, a sundress, laughing, looking comfortable, like she was in her own home. The next one was a short video clip, Eleanor serving food to this woman, like an insider, like she belonged. Another photo, the group on the balcony, the woman's hand resting casually on Thomas's shoulder. Familiar, intimate. I saved all of them. My hands were shaking. I tried a reverse image search. Nothing. But the body language told a story I didn't need to translate. The comments section included reactions from Thomas's business partners. People I knew. People who'd been to our house for barbecues. People who'd sent Christmas cards. Public, open, official. I was being erased in real time, one reaction at a time. I pulled up my texts with Eleanor. 2 days earlier, I'd sent her a message, feeling better. Need me to bring anything? Her reply, much better, sweetheart, thank you. No mention of a dinner, no wish you could join us, nothing. I sat there on my couch in the dark staring at my phone trying to make sense of it. Then I remembered something, the payment app. I barely used it, but Thomas did, and his transactions were set to public. I opened the app, scrolled through his payment history, and there it was. Multiple payments to someone named A. Monroe. $400, $750, $600, $1,200, $8,400 total. The descriptions. Lunch. Thank you. I still didn't know who A. Monroe was, but I printed the screenshots anyway, added them to the Ziploc bag. The bag now held the original credit card statement, the payment app screenshots, the online photos. At 58 years old, I'd been replaced at my own family's dinner table. The mother-in-law I'd visited every other day in the hospital had served my replacement without saying a word to me. And my husband of 35 years, had paid this person $8,400 over the course of several months and captioned it, "Thank you." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in the dark, holding my phone, staring at a photo of a woman I'd never met sitting in the seat that used to be mine. And I realized something. This wasn't just an affair. This was a replacement. He wasn't sneaking around. He was auditioning, testing the waters, seeing if she fit into the life he wanted, the life I was no longer part of. And apparently she did. Because Eleanor, 83-year-old Eleanor, who'd called me her daughter just weeks earlier, had welcomed her, served her dinner, smiled at her. I thought about the hospital visits, the meals I'd brought, the physical therapy exercises, the medications I'd helped her organize, and I thought none of it mattered. When it came down to it, blood won. Thomas was her son, and I was just the woman her son didn't want anymore. I added the screenshots to the Ziploc bag, tucked it back into the linen closet, and went to bed. I didn't confront Thomas. Didn't mention the dinner, didn't bring up the online posts or the payment records or the woman whose name I still didn't know. I just waited, because I knew now this wasn't going to end quietly. 3 months later, in early October, Thomas filed for divorce. He filed first. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning in October via certified mail. I had to sign for them. Thomas wasn't home. Early meeting, the text had said. I sat at the kitchen table and read them. He was asking for a 65-35 split in his favor. The business valuation Cascade Clean Fleet was worth a total of $240,000. I knew from dinner table conversations over the years that the revenue was much higher, but the exact numbers were his, not mine. The house we'd bought in 1991 for $185,000 was now worth $480,000, but it was listed in the filing at $315,000. Then I got to the line that broke something inside me. Claire Donovan contributed minimally to the growth and maintenance of marital assets throughout the 35 years of marriage. Minimally. 35 years of managing the household, paying the bills, keeping life running while he built his career, raising our daughter, cooking dinners, organizing holidays, visiting his mother in the hospital while he was too busy. Minimal. There was a note from his lawyer at the bottom. Accept this settlement or litigation will consume what assets remain. Translation. Take these crumbs or I'll bury you in legal fees. I drove to a cafe on Powell Boulevard, parked in the back corner of the lot, turned off the engine of my Honda Accord, and I cried for 35 minutes. Not pretty crying, not the kind you see in movies where a single tear rolls down a perfectly composed face. Ugly crying, face distorting, gasping for air, can't catch your breath crying. I was 58 years old. I had $4,800 in my personal account. No local family, no friends Nicole had insured that over the years pulling me away from anyone who wasn't connected to Thomas's business. My daughter had picked her father. My mother-in-law was silent. 18 more months until I was eligible for retirement. And my husband had just declared legally and in writing that I was nearly worthless. I thought about calling my sister in Phoenix, but I couldn't afford to be another mouth to feed. Not hers, not anyone's. I could barely feed myself. My recent mammogram had come back clear, but I was exhausted all the time. There were mornings I could barely get out of bed, not because I was sick, because I was defeated. That's not depression. That's defeat. There's a difference. At 58, I was too old to start over, but too young to give up. That combination is its own kind of hell. I thought about what my options were. Accept the settlement. Walk away with whatever scraps he was willing to throw me. Live on $4,800 and hope I could make it 18 more months to retirement without losing my job or my mind. Or fight. Hire a lawyer I couldn't afford. Drag this out for months, maybe years. Watch my savings disappear into legal fees while Thomas used his business accounts to fund his side. He had the money. He had the time. He had Nicole on his side backing up whatever story he wanted to tell. I had a Ziploc bag in a linen closet and a notebook in my car. That was it. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour, staring at the steering wheel, watching people walk in and out of the cafe, normal people, people whose lives hadn't imploded. And I thought, this is it. This is rock bottom. 58 years old, 35 years of marriage, and I'm sitting in a parking lot crying in a 14-year-old Honda because my husband just told a judge I contributed nothing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I just knew I couldn't go home. The next morning, I did something I can't fully explain. During my lunch break, I went to the library. I didn't know why. I just needed somewhere quiet that wasn't home. Multnomah County Library was downtown 6 blocks from my office. I walked there in the drizzle, the kind of flat gray that defines Portland in October. I didn't have a plan. I just needed somewhere quiet that wasn't home. I wandered into the self-help section. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed help. Maybe because I didn't know where else to go. I pulled a book off the shelf. Financial Recovery After Divorce. I opened the cover, and something fell out. A business card. The corners were worn like someone had carried it around for a while. I picked it up. The back was written on in blue ink. She deserved better. Call her. I flipped it over. Jennifer Stone Attorney. Family Law and Asset Recovery. Office address on Morrison Street. Phone number at the bottom. I stood there for a long time. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone sneezed 3 aisles away. Rain tapped against the windows. I thought about walking out, putting the card back, forgetting I'd ever seen it. I thought about accepting the 65-35 split and being done with it. I thought about lawyer costs, about the $4,800 I had, about how far that wouldn't go. And then I thought about the words on the back of the card. She deserved better. Whoever had left this card, whoever had written those words, believed that someone somewhere deserved to be fought for. Maybe that someone was me. I pulled out my phone, right there in the library stacks, and I called. Before I could stop myself, it went to voicemail, a professional but warm voice. You've reached Jennifer Stone. Please leave a message and I'll respond within 1 business day. My voice was shaking. Hi, my name is Claire Donovan. I found your card in a book at the library. I think I need help. My number is... I rattled off my phone number and hung up, and immediately regretted it. What am I thinking I can't afford a lawyer? 2 hours later, I was back at my desk at Pacific Northwest Logistics. My phone rang. Unfamiliar number. I answered. Claire. Yes. This is Jennifer Stone. You said you need help. Tell me what you have. Her voice was direct, but kind. The kind of tone that said, I've heard this story before. You're not alone. I started talking. I told her about the credit card statement, the charges I didn't recognize, the transfers, the 65-35 split, the business valuation that didn't add up, the house appraisal that was $70,000 too low. I told her about the word. Minimally. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, How much evidence do you have? A lot, I said. I've been keeping track for 7 months. Good, she said. Can you come in today after your work hours? Today, 5:30. Can you make it? I looked at the clock. It was 3:15. Yes, I said. Bring everything you have, she said. Every statement, every receipt, every photo, every note, everything. Okay. Claire. Yes. You did the right thing by calling. I didn't know if that was true, but I wanted to believe it. I hung up, sat at my desk, stared at my computer screen without seeing it. Linda from accounting walked by with a stack of files. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, just tired. She nodded and kept walking. I wasn't okay, but maybe I was about to be. At 5:15, I left work, drove home, grabbed the Ziploc bag from the linen closet. It was heavier than I remembered. 7 months of evidence, statements, photos, receipts, notes, patterns, numbers that didn't add up, everything. I held it in my hands and thought, this is it. Either this works or I lose everything. I got in my car, drove to Morrison Street, parked outside a small office building with a faded awning, and I brought the Ziploc bag with me, everything I'd collected for 7 months. It felt like bringing evidence to the autopsy of my own life. Jennifer Stone's office was on the 2nd floor of a narrow brick building on Morrison Street, right above a cafe that made the stairwell smell permanently of roasted hazelnuts and burnt espresso. I climbed the stairs at 5:45. Same day, I'd rushed to finish my afternoon work so I could leave 10 minutes early. The door was frosted glass, simple black lettering. The waiting room was small and empty. The reception desk was unmanned. A bell sat on the counter with a handwritten note, Ring for assistance. Before I could ring it, the inner door opened. Claire. Yes. Come on in, I'm Jennifer. She was maybe 54, 55. Built like a softball player, moved with the kind of quick energy that made you feel like things were about to get done. Short graying hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a handshake firm enough to make you believe everything would be handled. Her office was organized chaos, files stacked but labeled, 2 computer monitors, a coffee maker that looked like it was from the Clinton era. On the wall behind her desk, a framed embroidery that read, Assets don't just disappear. Next to it, a photo of 2 cats. That's Brief and Case, she said. My associates. I almost smiled. She poured me coffee in a chipped mug that said, World's okayest lawyer. It was stale and bitter. I drank it anyway. So, she said, sitting across from me at a small table by the window, Show me what you have. I opened the Ziploc bag like I was opening something that might explode. The credit card statement from March. The payment app screenshots showing A. Monroe $8,400, the online photos from June, the family dinner, the woman I didn't know, Eleanor serving her food, the woman's hand on my husband's shoulder. Jennifer put on her reading glasses. She reviewed everything in silence for 10 minutes. Then she took the glasses off. How long have you been married? 35 years. Children? 1 daughter. She's on his side. Jennifer nodded, like she'd heard this story 100 times before. Here's what I see, she said. Your husband is spending marital assets on his mistress. Every dollar he spent on her, the hotel, the jewelry, the flowers, that's dissipation of marital assets. In Oregon, that can be recovered from the marital estate. She leaned forward. But if he's funneling business money hiding assets, undervaluing the business in the divorce filing, that's not just divorce, that's marital fraud. I felt something shift in my chest. "I'm going to file subpoenas for the business bank records," she said. "Both locations. We're going to see where the money's really going. How much will this cost? $300 an hour. But I also do contingency work for asset recovery. A percentage of what we recover that you wouldn't have had otherwise. For a case like yours, we can structure it so you're not paying everything out of pocket right now." I felt my face relax, just a little. "Claire," she said, "you're not the first woman over 50 I've seen erased on paper after decades of contribution. But you're organized. You kept evidence. You work in, what, payroll coordination." She smiled, the first real smile. "You work with numbers every day. That's going to save you. Numbers don't lie even when people do." She tapped the stack of documents. "Neither do subpoenas." I signed the papers. She explained the timeline. "Subpoenas take about 3 to 4 weeks to get responses. In the meantime, keep documenting. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every change in pattern. You're building a case file," she said. I left at 6:45, walked down the hazelnut-scented stairs, and I felt something I hadn't felt since March. Not happiness, not even close, but purpose. For the first time in 7 months, I didn't just feel afraid. I felt like I had a direction. What came back from those subpoenas 3 weeks later? It was worse than I'd imagined. Much, much worse. Jennifer called me 3 weeks and 4 days after our first meeting. Tuesday afternoon, 2:15. I was sitting at my desk at Pacific Northwest Logistics reconciling hours for payroll. "Claire, I've got the subpoena responses. I need to see you. Can you come in today after work?" There was something in her voice that told me this wasn't small. I agreed. I arrived at 5:45. The printouts were everywhere. On her desk, on the floor, on the shelves. "Sit down," she said. I sat. "Your husband's business bank records tell quite a story." She handed me the first document. Cascade Clean Fleet employee payroll roster. I scrolled down. I recognized most of the names: location managers, technicians, the team I'd seen at company barbecues. And then I saw a name that made my hands start shaking. Angela Monroe. Title Operations Consultant. Salary $6,200 per month. Duration 18 months. Starting right around the time Nicole's boutique had been closing. I did the math automatically. Occupational hazard, 6,200 times 18, $111,600. 18 months, I said slowly. That means this started. I counted backward, way before the credit card statement in March, before I had any clue. This had been going on for a long, long time. "Keep reading," Jennifer said. I looked at the next line. My vision blurred. Nicole Whitmore, my daughter. Title Administrative Coordinator. Salary $2,400 per month. Duration 18 months. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the paper. 2,400 times 18. $43,200. My daughter had never worked a single day at Cascade Clean Fleet. She'd had a full-time job the entire time. She'd been paid $43,200 to do what? To keep her mouth shut. That's what. Thomas had bought our daughter's silence for $2,400 a month, nearly half of what she'd lost when her boutique failed. I felt like I was going to be sick. "There's more," Jennifer said. She handed me another stack. Transfer records. Regular payments from Cascade Clean Fleet to a company called Harbor Ridge Holdings, LLC. I'd never heard of it. "What is this?" "A shell company," Jennifer said. "No employees, no products, no services. It exists purely to hold money. Your husband has been funneling money into it to hide it from the marital estate. Total over the past 2.5 years, $147,000. And here," she said, sliding another file across the table. "This is his internal QuickBooks file. This is his real books, what he tracks for himself, not what he reports." I opened it. Revenue line $520,000 per year. Not $240,000 like he'd sworn in the divorce filing. More than double. I leaned back in the chair, let my mind finish the math. $111,600 for the fake consultant, Angela Monroe. $43,200 for my daughter's fake admin job. $147,000 for the shell company, Harbor Ridge. $8,400 in payment app transactions to Angela, separate from the payroll. Total $310,200. That was my retirement savings. That was 35 years of marriage. That was my future being drained while I was eating pot roast 4 days a week. This isn't a divorce, Jennifer said quietly. This is organized theft. She filed a motion for a forensic audit. She filed a motion for access to the safe at the Burnside location. The records had mentioned one. As I was getting ready to leave, she put her hand on my arm. Your daughter, she said. I know this is painful, but she signed W-9 forms for that income. She knew what she was doing. I nodded. I couldn't speak. I drove home in silence. Thomas was already there. Home unusually early. Watching TV. How was work? He asked without looking up. Fine, I said. I went into the guest room, the room where I'd been sleeping temporarily. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. 2 days later, Thomas made his move. Nicole showed up at my workplace on Thursday during lunch. I was in the break room with Linda Parker from accounting and Martin Hughes from shipping. The door flew open, not a slam, but close. Nicole marched straight toward me. She looked frantic. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, or angry, or both. How could you do this to Dad? Her voice carried across the entire room. Linda froze. Her sandwich hovered mid-bite. Martin suddenly found his coffee cup extremely interesting. You're destroying this family, Nicole said louder now. Dad made one mistake, and you're going to ruin everyone. That's why Dad... She stopped herself, but I knew what she was going to say. That's why Dad found someone else. I forked another piece of pot roast, chewed it slowly, swallowed, looked at her, and said nothing. Mom, say something. I took a sip of water, still said nothing. Nicole waited. 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. And I realized something in that moment. The people who yell are the people who are scared. The people who stay silent are the people who are ready. When I didn't react, Nicole's face changed. Confusion first, then something that looked like fear. She turned and walked out. The door slammed behind her. Linda exhaled slowly. Geez, Claire, Martin muttered into his coffee cup. Family. I finished my pot roast in silence, tossed the container in the trash, washed my fork in the break room sink, and walked back to my desk. I opened my email, attached everything I'd organized that morning. I'd started waking up at 5:30 to sort through the evidence, to build the file Jennifer had told me to build. Color-coded folders on a flash drive. March discovery, April to July patterns, August to September escalation, October filing, November subpoenas. Each folder had subfolders, statements, screenshots, photos, notes. I sent it all to Jennifer with the subject line, supplemental documentation. At 58 years old, I'd learned one thing. I do payroll coordination. I stare at financial documents 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I know what legitimate business expenses look like. Flowers purchased on a random Wednesday for a client's wife. That doesn't look like that. $2,400 a month paid to a daughter who never worked there. That definitely doesn't. When you believe no one's going to look, you get very tidy with your lies. Thomas had been very tidy, and so had I. I documented every transaction, every inconsistency, every pattern, every lie. I'd photographed credit card statements, payment app transfers, online posts, bank records, payroll rosters. I'd kept the original credit card statement from March in a Ziploc bag in the linen closet. I'd added to it month by month, and now it was all sitting in Jennifer's inbox. I didn't tell Nicole that when she walked out of the break room. I didn't tell her that her name was on a payroll roster for a job she'd never worked. I didn't tell her that she'd signed W-9 forms for income she hadn't earned. I didn't tell her that her father had paid her $43,200 to keep quiet about his affair. I just let her walk out. Because the truth was, I didn't owe her an explanation. She'd made her choice. She'd chosen her father. She'd taken his money. She'd stood at that family dinner and smiled while a woman I'd never met sat in my seat. And now she wanted me to say something. I had nothing left to say to her. Linda came by my desk later that afternoon. You okay? She asked quietly. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. She nodded, didn't push, walked away. Martin passed by on his way to the supply room, gave me a small nod, the kind that said, I saw what happened. I won't say anything, but I'm on your side. I nodded back and kept working. The next day, Jennifer called with something I never expected. Someone in Thomas's family wanted to talk. Claire Eleanor Whitmore called my office this morning, Jennifer said when I picked up the phone Friday afternoon. Your mother-in-law wants to meet, without Thomas or Nicole knowing. I was silent for a moment. Eleanor, the woman who'd served dinner to Angela at Nicole's house, who hadn't mentioned the dinner even though I'd visited her in the hospital, who'd been silent since June. She says she has information, Jennifer continued. She requested to meet tonight specifically. She drove herself to my office. She's here now, waiting in the reception area. I left work early, arrived at Morrison Street at 5:15. Eleanor was sitting in the waiting room. She'd aged visibly since June. The stroke had taken its toll. She stood with her walker, slower than I remembered, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Hello, sweetheart. We went into Jennifer's office. Eleanor sat down carefully. I need to tell you something I should have told you months ago. She took a breath. The night of the dinner at Nicole's. The one you saw online. Most people left by 9, but Thomas stayed. He'd had a few beers. He started talking while Nicole was cleaning up the kitchen. I leaned forward. He was bragging about everything. Her voice dropped. He said the business makes over $520,000 a year. He said, you have no idea. He said you wouldn't understand business anyway. She looked down at her hands. He told me about Harbor Ridge. He said it's his freedom fund. He said you'd never touch it. My chest tightened. He told me about that woman, Angela. He said she gets him in a way you never did. He said the expenses on her are a perfect arrangement. And Nicole, her voice broke. He said Nicole is on his side, that at least one woman in this family gets it. And then he laughed about it. He sat right in my granddaughter's kitchen and laughed. Eleanor looked up, tears in her 83-year-old eyes. I heard my late husband's voice coming out of my living son's mouth. She told us about Henry, Thomas's father. 40 years ago, Henry had done the exact same thing, an affair, hidden money, called Eleanor Clueless. When Henry passed 7 years later, Eleanor discovered that everything had been transferred to Thomas. The business, the house mortgaged down to nothing, the secret accounts drained. She'd been left with nothing at 55. I spent my 50s rebuilding from zero, she said. Rental apartments, receptionist at a vet clinic. I bought my first car at 54, a used sedan with over 87,000 miles on it. When I heard my son say the exact words my father said to me, she wiped her eyes. I couldn't stay silent this time. I won't watch it happen to you. Jennifer spoke gently. Mrs. Whitmore, you said you have information. Eleanor nodded. Thomas keeps a safe at the Burnside location, in the back office, behind the filing cabinet. He doesn't think anyone knows the code. But I do. I worked that shop for 20 years before Henry died. I know how both their minds work. She wrote the numbers on a piece of paper. 3, 15, 7, 22. Thomas's high school football jersey was number 3. My birthday is July 15th. Henry and I were married on the 22nd. They used the same patterns over and over. What's in the safe? A backup hard drive. Henry kept one too. That's how I found out about his affair after he passed. Thomas does the same thing. The real QuickBooks files going back years. Every transfer. Every payment, everything. Jennifer was taking notes. Mrs. Whitmore, would you be willing to testify about what Thomas said that night? Eleanor looked at me. Claire took care of me after my stroke. She visited me every other day. She brought me meals. She made sure I took my medications on time. My son didn't come once, not once. She turned to Jennifer. Yes, I'll testify. I'm 83 years old. I don't have many years left. I won't die letting my son become a copy of his father. We talked for another hour. Jennifer explained that she'd file a motion for access to digital assets at the business location, a legal procedure, standard in discovery. Eleanor's code would show us where to look. Jennifer would add Eleanor to the witness list. When Thomas's lawyers saw the name E. Whitmore on the list, they'd assume she was testifying for him. Family is family right. They wouldn't call her to prepare. A fatal mistake. But Eleanor wasn't done. She leaned forward. There's one more thing you need to know. In the safe, Eleanor continued, there's also cash and old business receipts, but the hard drive is what you need. Thomas updates it every quarter. Backs everything up there in case the computer crashes. Jennifer filed the discovery motion the following week. All business financial records, including digital assets from the Burnside location. Standard language in divorces involving businesses. The court approved it within 5 days. But getting into the safe took until December. The sheriff coordinated with the forensic accountant Jennifer had hired. A gray, cold December morning. I watched from a parking lot across the street. The sheriff's car parked in front of the Burnside location. Thomas's truck was already there. I sat in my Honda, coffee gone cold in the cup holder, couldn't look away. The sheriff and the forensic accountant, a woman named Dr. Patricia Reynolds, went inside. They came out 40 minutes later, carrying evidence boxes. One box looked like it still had the metal safe door attached to it. Thomas walked out behind them, on his phone, his face red even from across the street. Jennifer called that afternoon. "We've got the hard drive. Dr. Reynolds is analyzing it. Preliminary report in 10 days. Those 10 days felt like 10 years. Thomas and I were still living in the same house, Oregon law. Neither party can force the other out before final judgment. To protect property interests. We lived like ghosts, passed each other in the hallway without speaking. I slept in the guest room, door locked. He slept in the old bedroom, or didn't sleep. I didn't know. Sometimes I heard him pacing at 2 a.m. I'd lie there in the dark, listening to his footsteps overhead, thinking he knows something's wrong, doesn't know what, but he feels it. It was the hardest performance of my life, knowing everything, showing nothing. Mid-December, Jennifer called. "The report's ready. Can you come in?" I came in after work. The forensic report was 63 pages long. Jennifer had marked the key sections. Actual annual revenue, averaging over $520,000 for 4 years. Transfers to Harbor Ridge, $147,000 total. Angela Monroe payroll, $111,600. Nicole Whitmore payroll, $43,200. Internal spreadsheets where Thomas had tracked every fraudulent transaction himself. And then Jennifer showed me an email. Thomas had sent it from his work account to his personal account. Subject line retirement roadmap, dated June 15th. Claire's retirement fund will be drained by June. She won't realize until it's too late. File for divorce early October. 65-35 split is enough to start over with A. I read that email 3 times. She won't realize until it's too late. Start over with A. Jennifer spoke quietly. He documented his own fraud. When someone believes absolutely that no one's going to look, they get very tidy. They leave trails. The judge assigned to our case was Susan Coleman, known in Oregon family court for thorough questioning and zero tolerance for financial hiding. Trial date set, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Jennifer thought Judge Coleman had chosen the date deliberately, a bit of justice irony. From December through the end of January, I lived in that house with Thomas like strangers in a waiting room. February 14th felt impossibly far away and terrifyingly close at the same time. I read that email every night before bed. She won't realize until it's too late. But I had realized, and it wasn't too late. Not yet. I stopped wearing my wedding ring on January 3rd. Just took it off one morning and left it on the bathroom counter. Thomas never noticed. December and January were a strange suspended time, living in the same house but on 2 different planets. I'd come home from work at 5:30. His truck would already be there. Oddly, or he'd come home at 7. We'd move through the kitchen like a choreographed dance. He at the fridge, me at the stove, never touching, rarely speaking. Mail came was the entire conversation on some days. I kept organizing evidence, 5:30 every morning, sitting in the guest room with my laptop and the flash drive plugged in, cross-referencing dates, marking inconsistencies, building the timeline. 35 years of payroll coordination had taught me one thing. Numbers eventually tell the truth. You just need to be patient enough to listen. My hair started going gray at the roots. I'd been dyeing at Auburn for a decade. I stopped scheduling appointments. I didn't care about my appearance anymore. I just let the gray grow out. I lost nearly 9 pounds without trying. Stress, the pot roast diet, barely sleeping most nights. But my mind got sharper, reading glasses on the bedside table, waking up at 3 a.m. to review documents until dawn. Jennifer sent trial prep documents, what to expect in the courtroom, how to behave on the witness stand if I was called. Don't show emotion, she'd written. Judge Coleman respects composure. I practiced in the bathroom mirror. Face cold as money, voice steady. At work, Linda Parker asked if I was okay. You look different. I'm fine, I said, just tired. What I didn't say was I'm preparing for war. Thomas tried to talk to me twice in January. The first time, this doesn't have to get ugly. I looked at him. It's already ugly. The second time, I'll make sure you're taken care of. I didn't respond. I just walked straight into the guest room and closed the door. The night before the trial, I laid out my clothes. A navy suit I'd bought at Nordstrom Rack 3 years ago for a work presentation. A simple white blouse, low heels so I could walk without wobbling. No jewelry except the small gold earrings my mother had given me before she passed. I wanted Judge Coleman to see exactly who I was. A 58-year-old woman who'd worked the same job for 35 years, who'd raised a family, who'd managed the household, who'd been erased callously. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest room bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain tap against the windows, thinking about that email. She won't realize until it's too late. I thought about all the times Thomas had underestimated me, all the times he'd assumed I wasn't paying attention, all the times he'd believed I didn't understand. I thought about the credit card statement from March, the one I'd almost thrown away, the one that had started everything. I thought about the Ziploc bag in the linen closet, how it had grown heavier month by month. I thought about Eleanor, 83 years old, driving herself to Jennifer's office, telling me about Henry, telling me about the safe. I thought about the email Thomas had written to himself. Start over with A. I thought about Nicole, my daughter, sitting in that courtroom tomorrow, on his side. And I thought I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this, but I'm ready. At 4:30 in the morning, I got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table in the dark. Thomas's footsteps overhead. He was awake too. I wondered if he was scared. I wondered if he knew what was coming. At 6, I showered, put on the navy suit, the white blouse, the low heels, the gold earrings, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked older, grayer, thinner, but I looked ready. I drove to Morrison Street, parked outside the courthouse, sat in my car for 10 minutes. Jennifer was already inside, waiting. Eleanor was on her way, with her walker and her testimony. February 14th had arrived, Valentine's Day. I walked into that courtroom with 9 months of evidence, a 63-page forensic report, and a witness Thomas had never imagined would speak against him, his own mother. It was time. The security checkpoint at the Multnomah County Courthouse smelled like burnt coffee and floor wax. I stood behind a man arguing about his belt buckle while a deputy waved a metal detector over his shoes. Jennifer stood beside me with her trial bag. Thomas was already upstairs. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Judge Susan Coleman's courtroom was smaller than I expected. 20 rows of benches, fluorescent lights humming overhead. The judge sat at the front in her black robe reading documents. She was in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Thomas sat at the table on the right. His lawyer, Richard Kern, sat beside him in a charcoal suit. Thomas wore his navy suit. His hands were folded on the table. Calm. Composed. Angela Monroe sat 3 rows behind him in a cream dress. Nicole sat 5 rows back on the same side. She did not look at me. Eleanor sat behind me. I heard the soft scrape of her walker on the tile floor. Jennifer and I sat at the left table. She opened her trial bag and pulled out the binder. Exhibit 1 through 17, the credit card statement, the Venmo screenshots, the Instagram photos, the forensic report, the email. Kern stood first. He called this a straightforward dissolution. 35 years, irreconcilable differences. His client proposed a 65-35 split favoring Mr. Whitmore due to his role as primary income earner. He suggested the court expedite the final judgment. The judge nodded but did not speak. Jennifer stood. She laid out the evidence like setting a dinner table. Harbor Ridge Holdings, LLC, $147,000 transferred over 2.5 years. No employees. No services. A shell company to hide marital assets. Angela Monroe, operations consultant, $6,200 per month for 18 months. Total $111,600. Nicole Whitmore, Administrative coordinator, $2,400 per month for 18 months. Total $43,200. Never worked a day at Cascade Clean Fleet. The hard drive seized from the safe at Burnside. Forensic analysis by Dr. Patricia Reynolds. Internal QuickBooks showing actual annual revenue exceeding $520,000, not $240,000 as sworn in the filing. The email. Retirement roadmap. Dated June 15th. The line about draining retirement funds. The line about Claire not realizing until too late. The line about filing in October for a 65-35 split. Kern objected. He questioned the admissibility of the hard drive evidence. Judge Coleman looked at him over her glasses. The hard drive was seized under a valid court order. The forensic accountant is certified. Objection overruled. Kern asked for a recess. The judge said no. We are hearing the rest of this now. Jennifer called Eleanor Whitmore to the stand. The courtroom went quiet. Eleanor walked slowly with her walker. The deputy helped her sit. She placed both hands on the rail and looked at the judge. Jennifer asked her to describe the dinner at Nicole's home in late June. Eleanor spoke clearly. Thomas stayed late, drank beer, talked about business, said the company brought in over $520,000 a year, said Harbor Ridge was a fund Claire could not touch, said Angela and Nicole were on his side, said one woman in the family still had sense. Jennifer asked if there was anything else. Eleanor said yes. My husband Henry did the same thing 40 years ago. Affair, hidden money, I lost the house, I lost the accounts. My son watched it happen, and now he has done the same thing to the woman who took care of me after my stroke. Kern had no questions. Judge Coleman looked at Kern. Do you have any witnesses? Kern stood. He called Nicole Whitmore to the stand. If you're still here, comment any number from 1 to 6 below so I know you're standing with me. And tell me if you were in that courtroom, would you stay silent and wait, or speak up before everything collapsed? What happened next changed everything. And just a quick note, the next part includes some dramatized and fictional elements for storytelling depth. Some details may not reflect real events. If this style isn't for you, you can step away here. Otherwise, let's continue. Nicole would not look at me when she took the oath. Her eyes stayed on Kern, on the judge, anywhere but me. Kern asked her to describe her father as a businessman. Her voice shook. Hard-working. Honest. He asked about the payroll arrangement. She said she did consulting work, administrative coordination, legitimate. The lie came smooth, but her hands gripped the rail. Kern asked how she would describe my understanding of business. Nicole said I did not really understand how businesses work. I sat there, face calm, hands digging into my knees under the table. Kern sat down satisfied. Jennifer stood for cross-examination. She asked Nicole about her boutique in the Pearl District. When it closed, how much she lost. $125,000 total, including $40,000 from my retirement savings. When did you start receiving $2,400 per month from Cascade Clean Fleet right around the same time? Name one document you drafted, one email, one meeting. Silence. Nicole's face went red. Jennifer asked again. Nicole whispered, I cannot. Then Jennifer asked when Nicole discovered the affair between Thomas and Angela Monroe. Nicole froze. We have phone records. You called your father the night you saw him at Clyde Common with Ms. Monroe, 20 months ago. Nicole's hands shook. You knew for 20 months, helped hide it, said nothing to your mother. Correct. Nicole whispered yes. Jennifer pulled up Exhibit M on the screen. Thomas's will dated November 18th. Entire estate to Angela Monroe. Nicole Whitmore, $10,000. Nicole stared at the screen. Her face went white. She looked at Thomas. He would not look back. Her voice went flat. I want to change my testimony. I want to tell the truth. Kern objected. Judge Coleman overruled. Nicole told everything, knew about the affair for 20 months. Thomas paid her to stay quiet. She covered for him, lied to me, because she thought she would inherit when he divorced me. He told me you were boring, holding him back. I believed him because I needed to, because I lost your $40,000 and was ashamed, and he offered me a way out. She looked at me. I chose money over you. I'm so sorry. Judge Coleman removed her reading glasses. Due to intentional dissipation of marital assets and fraudulent financial disclosure under oath, The court awards Claire Donovan 75% of all marital assets. Primary residence 100% to Mrs. Donovan. Mr. Whitmore forfeits claim through proven financial misconduct. Cascade Clean Fleet requires independent valuation based on actual revenue of $520,000 per year. Mrs. Donovan receives equitable share based on true value. Harbor Ridge Holdings frozen immediately. All funds distributed equitably. Financial records referred to Oregon Attorney General for perjury review. Payroll records referred to Internal Revenue Service. Payments to Angela Monroe and Nicole Whitmore constitute potential tax fraud. Ms. Monroe as recipient of $111,600 for non-existent position referred to IRS for tax liability review. Ms. Whitmore and IRS audit will proceed for $43,200 fraudulent income. Your cooperation today will be noted for mitigation. Thomas tried to stand. Kern pulled him back down. Outside the courtroom at 3:47, Jennifer walked beside me. Eleanor moved slowly with her walker. Nicole sat on a bench. She stood. Mom. I kept walking. Mom, please. I stopped. Turned. You are right. You do not deserve it. I walked to the elevator. Eleanor beside me. The courthouse doors closed between us. Looking back at my story, I see a woman who trusted too much and questioned too little. I am 58 years old now. I own my home. I have financial security. But I also lost 20 months I will never get back because I ignored the signs. Do not be like me. Do not wait for the credit card statement to fall out of the mailbox. Do not ignore the late nights, the changed passwords, the sudden business trips. Family drama stories like mine do not start overnight. They build quietly over months and years, while you convince yourself everything is fine. My lesson is simple. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember that silence protects the guilty, not the innocent. Grandma stories taught me that truth always surfaces, and Eleanor proved it. She stood in that courtroom at 83 after a stroke because she knew what was right. If you find yourself in family drama stories where money disappears and answers do not add up, do not wait. Talk to a lawyer. Open your own account. Keep records. These grandma stories from women who survived betrayal all say the same thing: prepare before you need to. God gives us intuition for a reason. I ignored mine for too long. My advice: love your family, but verify the finances. Forgive when you are ready, not when someone demands it. And know that starting over at any age is better than staying in a lie. To everyone watching, if this story resonates with you, please share it. Subscribe for more family drama stories and grandma stories that teach real lessons. Leave a comment about your own experience or what you would have done differently. Final note, this content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely useful. If this style does not suit you, that is okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.